For about 150 years now, the whole debate around evolution has often felt like this fight. Science versus faith. Zero sum.
Right, like you have to pick a side.
Exactly. But the sources we're looking at today suggest that maybe this whole conflict is built on, well, a mistake, a kind of logical error right at the foundation.
See, it's this um, tendency to just equate evolution, which is really the scientific observation that life changes over time, adapts.
The fossil record shows, yeah.
Yeah, that observable fact, equating that with Darwinism, which is the specific materialist mechanism proposed to explain it. Random mutation, natural selection, no purpose, no guidance.
Okay, so that's our mission then. We accept the observation things change, but we need to really dig into the explanation, the mechanism.
Precisely. We want to explore why that standard explanation, neo-Darwinism, might actually be, well, scientifically shaky, mathematically improbable even.
And then look at what evidence might point somewhere else, towards something more like directed evolution or intelligent evolution.
Exactly. And our sources pull from a lot of different areas. Genetics, sure, but also paleontology, even quantum physics. They're trying to find some harmony between scripture and what they call the book of the universe.
That's an interesting phrase.
It is. And they argue pretty strongly that looking into life's origins isn't just, a scientific curiosity. They see it as almost a religious duty.
A duty? How so?
Well, the idea is if people of faith don't engage with the data, don't do the research, then that field gets left to those who start from a purely materialist viewpoint. And then, inevitably, the data gets framed to support that view.
Which they argue is what's happened for the last century and a half.
That's the claim, yes. The data's been kind of co-opted.
Okay, let's unpack where this confusion started. We always hear about Charles Darwin when evolution comes up.
Yeah.
But he wasn't alone, right? There was Alfred Russel Wallace.
That's right, co-developer.
Yeah.
But you barely hear his name.
Why is that? Why Darwin and not Wallace? Or why not both equally?
It seems it boiled down to philosophy, not the science itself. Wallace actually did more field work, spent more years out there than Darwin.
Really? I didn't know that.
Yeah, something like 12 years compared to Darwin's 5. And he absolutely agreed. Life evolved, common ancestry, all of that. But based on his observations, he concluded the driving force couldn't be random. It had to be an intelligent designer, a guiding principle.
So he saw purpose within the process itself.
Exactly. Whereas Darwin was really focused on finding a purely naturalistic, non-purposeful explanation. No mind involved.
And the scientific community at the time
Was becoming more and more materialist. They were actively looking for an explanation that didn't involve God or any kind of intelligence. So Darwin's mechanism, random mutation, natural selection, fit the bill perfectly.
It suited the philosophical climate.
Right. And Wallace's intelligent evolution, even though he co-discovered the basic idea of evolution, it got pushed aside, consciously sidelined.
Okay, so the fallacy is clear. Thinking that just because you accept evolution, the fact that life changes, you have to accept Darwinism, the random, unguided mechanism.
Precisely. They're not the same thing.
So let's tackle that mechanism. Why is it seen as inadequate? You mentioned the whale example earlier. That seems like a good place to start.
It's a great example. First, we have to be clear. Macroevolution happens. No serious scientist debates that. The whale fossils, they show this transition from a land mammal, step by step, into an aquatic creature.
And you can even see the remnants today, right? Those little leg bones inside the whale.
Vestigial hind limbs, yeah. They're still there, under the skin. It's undeniable proof of major change, transition, evolution in that sense.
Okay, observation confirmed. But the how?
That's the million-dollar question. Did it happen randomly? Or was there some kind of guidance? And this is where the math comes in. The probability argument against random chance just creating biological complexity.
Right, the numbers. Let's get into that because this seems to be a major sticking point for the Darwinian view.
It really is. Just think about creating one single functional protein. Proteins are the workhorses of the cell, right? Made of amino acids in a specific sequence.
Like beads on a string, but the order has to be just right.
Exactly. A typical protein might have, say, 150 amino acids. Getting the correct sequence for it to fold and function properly just by random trial and error, it's like guessing a combination lock with 150 digits.
Okay, so the odds are bad.
Bad doesn't begin to cover it. The calculated probability is something like 1 chance in 10 to the power of 74. That's a 1 followed by 74 zeros.
That's a ridiculously huge number.
Yeah.
What does that even mean in real terms?
It means it's practically impossible within the lifespan and resources of the universe. Physicists estimate the total number of possible particle interactions since the Big Bang. Every possible event or trial the universe could have run is around 10 to the 1 in 50.
Okay, so the universe has had 100 and 150 chances to try things out.
Right. But getting just one functional protein needs 174 trials on average. And the simplest known free-living cell needs over 200 different kinds of functional proteins. The number of random trials needed just explodes beyond anything the universe could possibly offer.
So time isn't the hero for Darwinism here. Even millions of years for the whale transition, it's just not enough throws of the dice.
Not even remotely close. The math makes random emergence of this complexity look, well, like a miracle, frankly. Which leads to the next point.
Which is?
The third element, life isn't just matter and energy, it requires information. Think DNA.
The genetic code.
Exactly, it's a code, it's abstract, it's symbolic, it carries instructions, it's like software for the cell's hardware.
And software doesn't just spontaneously emerge from hardware, right?
Not in our experience, no. Physical and chemical laws alone don't seem to explain the origin of complex, specified information. It's a different kind of thing.
This complexity. Didn't it even trouble one of the guys who discovered DNA? Francis Crick.
It absolutely did. He was a staunch materialist, but the sheer sophistication of the genetic code functioning like a language, it pushed him to consider really out there ideas like directed panspermia.
Aliens? Seriously?
Yes. The idea that life didn't arise randomly here, but was intentionally sent to Earth by an advanced alien civilization. Because the odds of it happening by chance seemed so low to him.
Wow. When a co-discoverer of DNA starts talking about aliens seeding life because random chance seems too unlikely, that says something.
It definitely highlights the depth of the problem for a purely random origin of information.
Okay, so if random processes are mathematically out, what does the actual biological evidence suggest is going on inside the cell? How does change happen?
Well, the evidence suggests it's often much faster and more targeted than Darwinian gradualism allows for. Think about the fossil record again. Stephen Jay Gould called it punctuated equilibrium, long periods of stasis, then relatively rapid bursts of change.
Not the slow, continuous change Darwin expected.
Not primarily, no. The transitional fossils are famously rare, and big leaps, like the Cambrian explosion where most major animal body plans appeared quite suddenly. That's hard to explain with tiny random steps.
And what about inside living organisms? Are they just passively waiting for that lucky random mutation?
Not according to some key discoveries. This leads us to natural genetic engineering. Barbara McClintock won a Nobel Prize for her work on this back in the 80s studying maize.
What did she find?
She found that when the corn plants were under environmental stress, their genomes didn't just wait for random mutations. The cells actively rearranged their own DNA. They cut and pasted genetic sequences in a non-random way to adapt and survive.
The cell was editing itself intentionally. She described it as a cognitive process. Like the cell knew what needed changing. It was behaving intelligently to solve a problem.
That's a radically different picture from random trial and error. It's like the cell is the engineer, not just the passive material. Exactly, and we see similar things elsewhere. Think about how complex eukaryotic cells, our kind of cells, arose from simpler prokaryotes. It likely involved endosymbiosis, one cell engulfing another, leading to mitochondria and chloroplasts. That's a highly coordinated event, not just a lucky accident.
Or antibiotic resistance in bacteria.
Right. Often that's not just one random mutation making a bug resistant. It involves complex mechanisms like bacteria sharing resistance genes directly with each other through things like plasmids. It's active, it's sophisticated, it looks engineered.
Okay, but accepting this kind of internal, maybe even cognitive cellular action that has huge philosophical implications, doesn't it? It seems to imply constant intervention or guidance.
It definitely challenges strict deism or materialism, the idea that, God set up the universe like a clock and then just let it run according to fixed laws.
Because this suggests the running itself involves active, intelligent adjustments.
Yes. The view from these sources, often rooted in Islamic thought, is that divine sustenance and guidance are constant. The universe isn't self-sustaining. It requires continuous input, moment by moment. Otherwise, it collapses. So, if cells are observed making these intelligent changes...
That fits with a model of constant, active involvement from a guiding intelligence.
Correct. It reframes evolution not as proof against a creator, but as the method of creation and adaptation actively managed.
But how? How could this guidance happen without us seeing constant miracles, without physical laws be obviously broken all the time?
This is where quantum physics potentially comes in. At the micro level, the world isn't strictly deterministic like clockwork. There's inherent uncertainty, probabilities, quantum effects like tunneling.
Things get fuzzy down there.
Very fuzzy. And this fuzziness, this indeterminacy, particularly maybe around things like the hydrogen bonds in DNA, which are crucial for the code, might create an opening, a flexibility.
An opening for what?
For non-physical influence. For information-based interventions to nudge or guide specific outcomes, like particular genetic changes, without violating the overall statistical laws of physics that we observe at the macro level.
So the guidance could be happening subtly at a quantum level, steering the ship without making big, obvious waves.
That's the hypothesis. It allows for ongoing creativity and direction within the system, maintaining the appearance of natural law.
Okay, let's shift to maybe the most sensitive part of this. Human origins. The sources seem okay with directed evolution for plants and animals, like the whale, but humans. That's treated differently in Abrahamic faiths, right?
Absolutely. There's a strong insistence on the special creation of the first human, Adam. It's seen as a unique, distinct event.
How is that reconciled with the idea of evolution, even directed evolution?
The key is that Adam's creation is described as miraculous directly by God without biological parents. The Quranic verse often cited compares Adam's creation to Jesus' created from dust by divine command. Be, and he was.
So, separate from the ongoing process that shaped other life.
Separate in its initiation, yes, a special act. But interestingly, there's scientific evidence that also points to a rather sudden emergence of uniquely human traits.
Such as?
Language, for one. People like Noam Chomsky argue that the capacity for complex language, with its universal grammar, seems to have appeared relatively suddenly, maybe around 50,000 years ago, not gradually built up.
And physically.
Paleontologist Stephen Jay Gould made a big point about human physical stasis. He noted that anatomically, modern humans haven't really changed significantly for the last 50,000 years or so, which is odd if slow, continuous Darwinian evolution is the main driver.
What about the genetics? The DNA evidence showing we're so similar to primates and even Neanderthals, that seems to suggest continuity, not a completely separate creation out of nowhere.
That's the crucial point of synthesis. The sources don't necessarily argue for Adam being created ex nihilo from absolute nothingness with zero connection to prior biology.
Okay, so how does it work then?
The interpretation offered is that God performed a special creative act upon an existing biological form, perhaps taking a highly evolved hominid structure
And infusing it with consciousness, self-awareness, language, the soul, the things that make us uniquely human?
Exactly. So it's a special creation, motherless and fatherless in its unique human essence, but utilizing the biological hardware, if you will, that had been developed through the preceding directed evolutionary process.
So it respects both the theological insistence on uniqueness and the scientific evidence for genetic continuity. That's quite a synthesis.
It aims to bridge that gap, turning evolution from something seen as hostile to faith into potentially part of the divine plan.
Okay, we've covered a lot of ground here. We've looked at why simply equating evolution with Darwinism is, well, a fallacy, according to these sources.
We've seen the mathematical arguments against random chance generating biological complexity and information.
Right, the staggering probabilities, the need for information is a separate ingredient.
And the biological evidence suggesting cells themselves engage in natural genetic engineering, pointing towards internal direction.
Plus the potential role of quantum mechanics in allowing for subtle, ongoing guidance. And finally, a way to view human origins as both special and connected.
It really reframes the whole picture.
So, thinking about the big takeaway, what's the ultimate point of challenging the Darwinian mechanism and arguing for this directed or intelligent evolution?
Well, beyond just scientific accuracy, the sources argue it comes down to understanding what you're really saying if you deny the need for intelligence.
What do you mean?
If you reject the idea of a single, overarching, constantly involved mind guiding the incredible complexity and apparent cognition we see in life, you don't actually get rid of intelligence.
You just relocate it.
Exactly. You essentially have to grant godlike intelligence and foresight to trillions upon trillions of individual cells and molecules. Every protein folding correctly, every DNA repair, every adaptive mutation suddenly has to be its own little miracle of spontaneous, unguided wisdom. You replace one god with countless tiny, inexplicable ones.
That's a powerful thought. So we'll leave you, the listener, with this question to think about. When you really look at the complexity inside a living cell, the information, the coordination, the seemingly goal-directed actions, does that intricate dance scream blind chance? Or does it point towards maybe even necessitate the involvement of a continuous guiding infinite intelligence?